Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Fought, and it wasn't fixed, Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
Man, I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah, first of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what way would they fight?
Well,
not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking at right now.
JoeRogan was stunned upon hearing that Jake Paul had offered Francis Ngannou the chance to be his next opponent after his fight with Gervonta Davis was canceled. On his podcast, Rogan called the matchup insane and borderline reckless for the YouTuber turned boxer. Ngannou, a UFC veteran and crossover boxing powerhouse, is one of the most dangerous punchers in combat sports. Rogan questioned whether Jake truly understood what he was getting himself into. Still, he admitted that if the fight happened, it would be a massive spectacle, and Francis knows that too.
And Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out. And Francis says, all right. And Francis says, well, how can I help you? Nikista says, well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out. And Francis says, all right, but specifically, how can I help you? Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out. And Francis asks him again, okay, what specific...
When Jake Paul's exhibition bout with Gervonta Davis fell through amid serious legal allegations against Davis, Paul and his team scrambled to find a replacement. One of the names considered was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion turned crossover boxer. His size, power, and global notoriety make him one of the most dangerous men in striking sports.
I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more, we don't think it'll happen.
Michael Bisping highlighted the extraordinary size gap in the rumored fight between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou. He noted that Paul's original target was Gervonta Davis, a much smaller lightweight. Moving from Davis to Ngannou places Paul at the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of physical dimensions and challenge. Bisping emphasized that this jump isn't just a mismatch in skill or record, but also in raw mass, reach, and overall threat.
Like Mike Tyson, who's 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago, Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua. And that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props. I'd give him his credit. And you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout. Because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be an admirable thing to do. And it will be Jake Paul taking on somebody big.
According to Francis Ngannou, the outreach from Jake Paul's team about stepping in as a replacement caught him off guard. He said the proposal came suddenly and felt misaligned with his current goals. While money was reportedly discussed, Ngannou rejected the idea, stating that the terms and circumstances didn't make sense for him. He questioned how moving from Davis to him could be framed as a logical option, emphasizing that this wasn't about payday, it was about the fight making professional sense.
Fight Jake to replace Gervonta. I'm like, who's Jake? I was so confused, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on. Don't disrespect me like that. And then they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. He make no sense for me. It's not my what I'm.
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier issued a blunt warning to Jake Paul about the potential consequences of facing Francis Ngannou. Cormier pointed to Ngannou's devastating power and the sheer mismatch in experience and physicality, suggesting Paul isn't prepared to handle a strike-heavy heavyweight from a mixed martial arts background. His message was clear. This isn't just about money or spectacle. The risk outweighs the reward.
Right? Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight, and that's it.
Cormier questioned Jake's motives, suggesting it's more about publicity than genuine competition. He added that Jake underestimates what it takes to fight a heavyweight who can punch through gloves. In MMA, Ngannou's power is legendary, but in boxing, it becomes even more concentrated. Cormier warned that if Jake enters the ring without understanding the difference between MMA striking and boxing defense, it could be a very short night for him.
This is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take, because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. I'll but anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this. And you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua was a two-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite.
that would have been a terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, like, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Several analysts have flagged the proposal for Jake Paul to face Francis Ngannou on extremely short notice as a risky move for both Paul and the broader fight narrative. They note that Paul's original opponent, Gervonta Davis, pulled out late, prompting Paul's camp to approach Ngannou as a replacement. However, as Ngannou pointed out, stepping in on such short notice made no sense for his career trajectory. Strategically, Paul wouldn't have adequate time to prepare for a heavyweight with elite power and experience. Many analysts compared the proposed Jake Paul versus Ngannou clash to Tyson Fury versus Ngannou, citing crossover appeal, stylistic mismatch, and spectacle over conventional boxing merit. Just as Fury struggled more than expected against a former MMA champion, a Paul versus Ngannou fight would follow a similar framework. A social media famous boxer stepping up to face a monstrous athlete with elite power.
Paul, wouldn't make sense. What in the hell do you think Tyson Fury got for boxing you? These aren't mean things from me. This is a reality. Tyson Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. Is a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson, how those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see.
Chael Sonnen recently weighed in on the looming matchup between Jake Paul and Ngannou with a mix of amusement and curiosity. From a sporting perspective, Sonnen noted the fight lacks balance. It's more about testing how much punishment Paul can absorb. Sonnen reminded listeners that when Ngannou faced Tyson Fury, a seasoned heavyweight with boxing pedigree and a size advantage over Paul, a single clean shot was enough to drop him. In Sonnen's view, if Fury had trouble surviving Ngannou's power, expecting Paul to walk through those same punches and scathes seems unrealistic.
Competitive nature of the sport throws this one completely off for me. And the fact that Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is, right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport. He's bad for the sport. He doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense and he's making a mockery of things, this is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching guys